you really lived at the mercy of Microsoft. If you built something really interesting, Microsoft would likely build a copy of it and put it into Windows later, and you'd be out of business, right? With the web, as it grew, sure there was proprietary browsers such as Netscape and then later Internet Explorer, but the web server software was something that, thanks to Apache, thanks to Linux and BSD, but also other open source projects like PHP, we kept the web server-side technologies free, as open and free. And that helps preserve the importance of standards in the web community and helps prevent what might be hard to read, has been Apache's growth over time, over the last 12 years. And as it might be hard to tell, but it's been the majority web server technology since very early on in its age. Now, Microsoft has come and competed and grown and dipped, and it goes back and forth. But Apache's relevance in the fact that we kept the web free was due entirely to the fact that lots of people used it. And that's a similar story playing out today with Firefox as well. Even though it's not the majority web browser, it is still large enough that it is keeping Microsoft on their toes. So another story that I want to tell about open source, and again, this is going to be really fast, and I apologize for not being able to get into too many details, and I also apologize to the translators. But there's another project many of you probably have not heard of, but every one of you depends upon every day, and that is called OpenSSL. OpenSSL was a library of cryptography routines, mathematical routines, that started out from two developers in Australia and grew to be improved by other developers around the world. It has become the standard library for doing any sort of secure communications online, accessing a bank's website or building, encrypted communication, mail programs and such. And the fact is it was built almost entirely outside of the United States. And for the entire, they have this, kind of a public projection, public relations thing that says that, they're using our IP, right? But the very first implementation of TCP/IP in Windows, the basic Internet protocol, was actually a port of the code from the Berkeley Standard Distribution Unix. If you remember WinSock.dll, that was Berkeley Unix code. Microsoft has also long shipped Unix tools for Windows that were basically ports of existing open source software. And they did follow all the rules. They just didn't want you to know about it to broaden. Today, they're very realistic. They realize that there is business in this open source world. They work with MySQL and Sugar CRM and even JBoss to make sure that their applications run well on Windows. And they're even starting to discover, I think, that this idea of having developers have communication with the outside world through blogs, through public source code repositories, actually starts to make sense. Somebody could actually tell them to turn that down so it's not too distracting. That have been done generally say that the majority of the work that's done on a per hour, per developer hour kind of basis is done for professional reasons. It's done by, whether it's a company that has an open source product that they want to improve, or it's simply somebody who's using, Apache or using Linux, finds a bug and offers the fix for that bug back to the original project. This is a significant amount of effort, right? And this is not something where you need to sit down and spec out, the 10,000-hour project that it takes somebody to work on. This is stuff that happens organic. Open source proves that that is wrong. Open source, I think, serves as a model for understanding how do we get people online to not just talk, but actually build something together. And one of the things that's important here is that I think it's actually pointing to a new kind of software engineering project management style, if you will. One that is less about saying, okay, we have 10 features, they have to be in the next release. Each of them is going to take 50 hours to build, and let's come up with a Gantt chart.
That's a tough question. So all of us up here have jobs that pay us to either write open source software or be involved in talking to people about open source software. Every major software company out there, every major technology company, has moved in the direction of open sourcing some or all of its technology. And it does that for a number of reasons. One is that there are, standard models for things like providing support, right? Or when a company uses software, oftentimes it wants to know that if it has a problem, there's a phone number it can call and get a quick answer to resolving that. There is also a big market in training. Some of the software, especially the poorly documented software, companies will pay hundreds, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for training classes if they use it, in any substantial amount. I imagine there's going to be a lot of use of OpenOffice, for example, and a lot of companies who might pay, $100 per student to have a one-day class to teach them how to make the best use of OpenOffice, right? This is a business that Microsoft and other companies know very well. So support and training are kind of the standard ones. And then there's also business in if you're installing software for somebody and they want it, modified a certain way or improved a certain way, you can offer to sell them your expertise, right? If you're a programmer or if you're a company that does offshore or outsourced development, right? Then there's more, in my opinion, more economic opportunity around a given piece of open source software than there is around a given piece of proprietary software. It is more decentralized, right? More different companies can work together around a common piece of technology. It is not the case, though, that it's the standard model with proprietary software is I work hard, I build this thing, and then I sell this thing a million times. Just get that out of your head, okay? And every other economic opportunity is available.
Very briefly, a question. OpenOffice.org is used in Russia, but I'm not aware of very many Russian companies that offer support for OpenOffice.org. Can anyone tell me in this audience of just two? Okay, the question was, how do you make money? Well, form a company right now that offers support for OpenOffice.org. You will make money. You will be able to tell people that you can provide some interesting support for people who are using OpenOffice.org, as Mike was suggesting. You can even work with us, the main project, to do support and training. And if you have developers, you can say, we will configure your installation of OpenOffice.org however you like. An example could be with a splash screen in it, add some proprietary elements. There is no limit to this. These are ways to make money relatively easily. It is not selling shrink-wrapped commodity, but you can do that too. Because services, support, and training are very, very effective ways to make
open source projects, to be honest. And an open source project only becomes successful when it reaches a critical mass of activity. And so do a lot of research first to see whether the program you want to write, is there anybody else in the world working on that kind of project? And I would say spend 2 hours with Google. That's probably enough due diligence, right? The odds are very good that there is already a project working on a similar type of effort. And at the worst, the worst case is that there's software that will help you start your own project. But the best case is that it's something you can join. It has these good qualities, that we look for in a good open source project. And so joining that and being a part of that effort gets both you and those other developers closer to a critical mass. And second, if you really do have something unique and wild and totally different than what everybody else is working on, there are sites like SourceForge.net to start one there. But the tools are the easy part. The hard part is finding other people who have the same problem as you do, who can work with you on it. Because an open source project of one person is not going to be successful. You need, at the very least, other people to use the technology. And that's where you will find other contributors as well.